Man, I forgot how cool that intro is. I really like that one. Actually, it's nice. It was nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Badass.
Hey, why did Jeffrey Epstein himself? Why, Bernie? Because he had low self-esteem. I heard that Jeffrey Epstein never wanted to be rich and famous. All he ever wanted to do was settle down and have some kids. Oh, are you surprised? Are you surprised Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide? Imagine how surprised Jeff had to have been. Sorry, I'm a scab. I'm just feel bad for the writer's strike, but I felt like the only thing that was appropriate to do since we're still doing shows is to read something I wrote, because that's literally
you're a scab. Does that mean you're actually getting paid for this stuff? Like, I thought like I'm just volunteering my time.
Somebody send us a super chat right now.
Right?
Just show us the power.
Please and thank you. We are back.
You know that union dues are $700 a year, and it's only like $1,300 to assemble a guillotine with today's steel prices.
Damn, like,
yeah, I missed you, bro. It's good to see you.
It is, right?
I like your jacket. That's a sweet.
Thank you. It's a nice little sweater,
dude. Super
got silky inside liner.
That's pretty sweet.
Wish I could say that it was one that I made, but that was actually a Winners pickup. Good old Winners. But repping the BurnCon underneath. Like the alien.
Yeah, I've got sort of a yabba dabba definitely having a good time thing going on here.
Is that a Xirtus? You got dope clothing.
This is kind of a Fred Flintstone,
right?
You know, you got the
Barney Rubble, right? You got Xirtus, Flintstone, and BurnEye Rubble here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the answer to this. That's how I make things work, bro. So I mean, there's a couple. We want to talk about a couple things. There's some, and then of course we've got Bernie and BurnEye.
Here we go. The other angle. Oh, that's not even them. Wrong labels. I thought the labels.
What are you doing awake at this hour, Melissa? By the way, live from the internet. It's Saturday. I don't know. Like, I'm really excited because
it was Friday. Now it's Saturday. It's weekend at BurnEye's. Always.
You know, some people are dead and we're alive. Like, that's how I feel right now. And it's interesting, like with television, how these people that can't have a show and that we can, right? So I kind of feel really excited because it's like, we have a show. We can
absolutely several right, like, and thank you everyone for your patience as we were waiting here. Hopefully Jeremiah will be joining us with a live demo, but it was pretty late, and
but this is like a back on the air kind of like plan thing. We also have some good. There's some science, but we also have some historical science stuff too. So.
We're going to have a couple different segments, right? We're going to talk about first the real science, going over a little bit of our plans coming up, like another Science of the Sound series with Ominous there. And you're quite the actual music producer, sound engineer yourself, and DJ. And like part of like why I delayed this episode by 4 hours, setting it back a half hour was we were actually making music. Xirtus was producing, showing, teaching, and we were looking up the different plugin that we're going to have to use in our next episode of the Science of the Sound to actually be able to try to put in some of these solfeggio frequencies, make sure that it's in the 432 hertz, and actually do real science tests and be able to create the same song, but one with these frequencies, one without, and do tests and stuff like that.
It's pretty interesting, just like the more time I spend with the sound. And so when I was traveling, I got like these noise canceling earbuds on sale that were like this like Chinese knockoff ones. They're like basically knockoff of the Bose sound canceling though. So they have perfect sound canceling on it. You hear all this jet sound and it goes away. So I became really interested in sound cancellation, and I've been looking into like more binaural entrainment noise, and what you can do with it is really interesting. Like, because you can use it to really like change your
literally levitate stuff to to just as one example of taking it to the extreme.
So even on a simple Reichian level though, just changing your conscious element in a place is so big. Like, imagine you're in an airport and you're stressed out, and so all of a sudden you're like listening to the equivalent of Enya, hypnosis.
be
And
able to
you know what I mean?
right, to reach that moment of
And
stillness
that impacts
all the chaos.
and that impacts everyone around you, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, that guy's awesome. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't know why. They just are having a better day. And then that changes everything. And like little things like that you can do just by going into a place and not being willing to submit to their conditioning, and actually setting the standard for the presence of tone and resonance. It's an interesting way to control a room.
Oh, it's beyond interesting, and it actually ties into the same technology that was being disclosed in my recent interview with Eric Hecker there, that he was saying that part of like the Havana syndrome attacks that were experienced by some of him and his coworkers while he's working at the South Pole and all of this stuff, and like tying it back into this Science of the Sound series and the ultimate goal of being able to engineer music that physically heals, that physically elevates the consciousness, that physically connects and resonates to that soul and the full, connection and what it's really about, and get that rhythm, beat, rhyme flowing.
Yeah, understanding soul is going to be like the more interesting. We're going to start seeing technologies that really do tie to Geist and soul more, and we already have, right? And this is the kind of the thing that we've noticed in the last 100 years. But it's like we clouded it out on purpose with media, you know?
Oh, 1,000,000%. It was intentionally like at the the end of the 1800s compared to after World War I and World War II, the reset, and completely taken out and suppressed and hidden, and that this bioelectric field energy and sound energy as well being a key part of the EM field and EM field energy of bio life and thought and everything that is existence of consciousness and life here on Earth and the rest of the universe, and potentially the abuses and crimes against humanity that have been perpetrated against us on mass scales, potentially by God knows who out there, different, because it's like you don't want to blame like any like
Even like the
group,
simplest, like just looking at Edison and Nikola Tesla period of choosing 50 hertz versus 60 cycle hertz, little things like that. You can see examples of there's not necessarily malice. Like Edison isn't necessarily like, he's probably a psychopath. Like I've been reanalyzing a lot of people and noticing that Americanisms or maybe Atlanticisms are psychotic. Like James Bond is a psychopath. Indiana Jones is a psychopath. Indiana Jones kills
the
Nazis
military.
and says, "Hey,
you're bang on that," but it's that's the programming, and that anyone that goes into boot camp is being like traumatized and shaped into being a psychopath that can kill without thinking and
right."
emotionally and
But it makes it hard
connecting to the fellow humans.
How does a Klingon decide? Like, how does a Klingon decide like what's too violent? Like, how do you decide what's too American? Like, how do I, as an American, how do I decide what's too American? Like Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie was this kid, like an orphan who like
too American. As a Canadian, I will say too American was trying to rename French fries America or freedom fries.
That was pretty American. That was almost definitively American if you think about it. They're like, we don't need you anymore. Like that's pretty American. But yeah. I mean, Americans themselves, like Americans are like, as a standard, we have like the true thing, which is like the elite royals that run everything. But really America, just like any place else now, you have this foundling meritocracy. You have orphans that are put into cockfights, and whichever ones survive, you give them, they get to run the trains, right? Like that ends up being the most famous people are foundlings. They get to run the trains afterwards. They inherit the earth, right? So America is a violent psychotic place, but so is Britain. I mean, like, it's not just Indiana Jones, it's James Bond too, you know. So James Bond is a psychopath, like, completely.
Psychopath
He just
to manipulate and affect the outcome of the American.
So, like, who gets to be the villain? Like, who gets to say they're the good guy? Like, who gets to say, like, that Edison was a bad guy? You know, like, that he chose 50 cycles for a second or something like that. How can you say it's necessarily that they did it because they were
full
evil?
Cycle back to it all, and that there's this God, and then I lose my
there's a more organic way. Like, Nikola Tesla did 60 cycles because he found a reason. He thought that 60 cycles was more natural, right? And there's ways it could be. What did Edison end up doing? He's like, 50 cycles is more
the
practical,
difference between
and he sold electric chairs, right? He
and
electrocuted people with it.
Yeah, you're on like the different cycles between even Europe and North America, Mexico, and can't like the different grids and intentionally difference of them and what's more natural resonance.
We use 50 cycles now a lot because of USB, and like the fact that Apple pushed so hard against, and everyone's like, oh, Apple's super evil for wanting to use their own systems. There's some interesting reasons why USB is maybe less healthy. Like, there could be a better standard that is a 60 cycle or something else, right?
And competition is always better in no matter what, especially in branching huge technologies, and that you don't want to just have one stem up. You want several foundation blocks of languages.
Well,
and
it's funny because USB, they even call it a key. So it's like, imagine like everyone had the same freaking key. And I feel like in the 1800s, a lot of people did have really, like, to the point by the early 20th century, you have really similar, easy to open every door if you're like a locksmith keys, right? And so, yeah, there's something about having that, but.
Or a magician, right? Okay, I remembered my thoughts. Back to soul in music and a real science experiment of just measuring soul within music. It would be to analyze the brain waves and like functions while listening to electronic synthesized music, this like just the instrumentals, and then add in the human voice and like the spirit with like the soul in it, and see like where it's activating within the brain nodes even, and how much
it'd be nice to be using like EEG, like the ganglion processor on the EEG for the BCI brain connectivity interface. So it scans which kinds of frequencies are coming from which part of your brain, right, at the same time. Those are pretty practical for that.
That's exactly the key to this technology and this metaphysical, almost like God code key of how life and life energy and consciousness and physics all connect into
I have an article about that, actually. Let me see if let me see here. This is like kind of abstract or academic, but if I could present a screen for a second. Have you seen the like smell they can recently we've been talking about like they can read your mind with machines, and then they can make music. They got to read the Nine Inch Nails song, and they did a Led Zeppelin song. Now they get smells, so they can know what you're smelling, and they can reproduce that smell in people and make you feel like you're smelling that smell. And this is like, I remember was it Simpsons? It's like smell you later, and then the future of the smell technology, and that's the biggest one. But there's it's interesting this year, just all the tech that's come out, because now they have the ability to do everything. Like, they can make you smell things.
Why does it have that dirty
so first
there on the
this is
it only coming out cut?
This is a different article, I think. I think that might be. but it might be related to like that research. But if you basically what this was about is mapping molecular structure to odor perception, and then figuring out how we react to odor perception, and using AI, building a model that can provoke, basically can record and understand which reactions to stimuli should happen, which stimuli antagonists have occurred, and then from there translate and provoke your system to have those reactions the same way your metabolism would, or to actually use your metabolism to produce it. So then you're like, oh man, oranges.
Like, what do you mean? My farts do smell like roses, or at least to me, because I programmed it like that.
Well, it's
Cellular.
so weird because, you know, like, so I have friends who have like good degrees that they thought, all right, I'll do it. You know, like, I know better, school's stupid, but I'll do it. I'll spend $70,000 or whatever it is to get a degree as like a chemist. And I hope he's not listening right now. But like, my God, like, he made amazing breakthroughs, and it's amazing in chemistry, like the amount, like, because he realized also the organic movement's kind of a lie. Like, you could easily have organic
Which friend
chemistry.
of this is yours, and why have you not brought us together in
He's such a
Alchemist?
cynic. He's such a cynic. You wouldn't even, yeah, he can't even, it's a lot to deal with. He's an amazing human being, but
It's okay. Jeremiah would be the key
he's a
between
lot
us
like
because
Jeremiah, but like if Jeremiah played Russian roulette more, you know. But
I feel you.
yeah, but so he has a problem because he gets his degree, and like now this is going to be the future. Like the end, it's kind of like for a lot of people. I have other friends who have pharmaceutical degrees, and biopharmacology is not going to be necessary within the next 20 years. Probably 4. You know, they'll
Why?
be,
What makes you say that with such certainty?
well, definitely within 20 because of Neuralink and all the technologies like this in terms of molecular mapping and understanding how you're supposed to respond to stimuli. Then what they can do is they can produce those simulations virtually, or even with a machine, but mechanically rather. So then you're able to produce something without chemicals. So that's the end of the pharmaceutical lobby, unless they move into AI. And so they are. Everybody is. But with that, what that
I
means
see
is you
what
won't
you're
be,
saying. Like essentially be able to like 3D print, like synthesize your
beyond that.
own
Beyond that. So like your brain
or
right
program
now.
your own cells through your brain. If you're
Yeah.
controlling your brain, you can be like your
So
3D
if you,
printer is like your stem cells.
let's give the simplest example. Like, let's say someone smokes drugs, and when they take their drugs, you know, it's not the drugs that's doing it. It's like your brain is reacting to it, and then you're feeling cannabinoid receptors, right? It's not actually the thing itself, it's the reaction that your brain's doing. So if you can skip the process, if you're a Buddhist monk, then you
More
can
like
imagine
DMT.
you can
And that
yeah, or tryptamines are great, or whatever it is. So, but these kinds of things that people can naturally do, that can be even more conveniently controlled by Neuralink, right? So all of a sudden you can control whether or not people can see, whether or not people can see in the dark, or whether or not you can see at all. You can control whether or not people smell anything, or whether or not it's always horrible, or whether it's too much, or on up and down. Like, you can control the
so could
levels.
Neuralink increase the human visible light
Yeah,
spectrum?
all of it. Yeah,
And
like you'd be able to perceive infrared because you have the sensory. We just delete. Basically, what you do is you have a super powerful computer, and then your or
could you
camera, and
regenerate limbs like a
you're
salamander?
recording. That's a whole other thing unrelated to it, but we'll start first with the point that your system has all of these great sensors, and you can only record like a very small amount of data. So you're getting this small MP3 version of your life. But there's a lot more data that could be stored if there were a place to store it, and if there were a machine to process it. So you could be jacked into something that was able to process for you more of the information. And then it would be interesting. Like, people are like, oh, the human mind is so untapped. Well, that's kind of true, because there is a lot more that could be recorded, but really you don't notice how much there is because you do get the best of it. Like, we do a really good job of getting the gist out of the experience, right?
Hold on one sec though. So what in the uh, physical, technological
There's no Krav Maga.
process computing material, like for instance, a lot of hard drives, it's like the solid state use gold. Is that correct? Like as the material and
all things are
crystals?
changing now. So like the new one, there's another article I saw about DNA. Let me see if I can find the DNA data system. Where's that at?
Because what you had me thinking there is if it is gold and accessible gold, then monoatomic gold, that would actually make sense why consuming single atom quantum state super gold that would dissolve and be usable within your cells.
So yeah, I mean basically because so there's two things happening. One, you've got quantum computers, and then you've got analog mechanical computers that are subatomic, nanoparticulate, quantum mechanical spring and quark computers, which are basically the same as clockwork springs, but more like
There's still
explosions.
ones and zeros of
So,
electromagnetic
well,
forces,
so what's
correct?
a couple things are happening. One is you've got physical explosions of chemical molecules, right? So something explodes and then it swings. So you're literally having physical energy that's being used. That's the first major difference. The other thing is it's wireless because of this. So like there's resonant when an explosion happens, something else affects from that explosion. So you're having this similar to how radio works, but on a more violent level. And so you have physical changes. So you can store billions and billions of particles, I mean, of digits of data, of bytes of data, of bits and bytes of data inside of a DNA chain, and then it can roll out. And so there's two ways that you can do that. One is a resonant solid state where you have access to the data in a quantum computer. The other is kind of the way tape works, where tape storage plays out. And so as the data lives, it expands and junk DNA is produced, which then it has important information. But then other information is
So
retained and it keeps itself from mutating. And so that it can continue to reproduce itself. And over a period of 80 to 120 years, it would release all of the data that's stored in that. So you could use a human, for instance, or a turtle or something like that, and it would release the data like a tape as it lives its life.
and that could potentially already be going on, and we a quantum computing AI is what's going to be able to finally read our junk DNA
Well, so
potentially or
there's been some
utilize it,
fun.
program it.
This is all like 80s theories, right? Because like today everybody likes the simulation theory stuff, but the 80s theories were like, okay, we're seeded, or 60s even, we're seeded from space, and there's the data farm here, and the data is we live and die and evolve in order to protect the core, or that core of the germ of the data, and like whatever the aliens come back, they're gonna want whatever's been stored in the data. I think it's more interesting if it's that we're processing and calculating. And so through your lifetime, you've got seeded these Mendelbrot algorithms, which
Hold on
then
one
need
second.
to calculate.
What? So in this theory reality, you're saying General Z and Superman is the scenario of what the aliens are going to want when they come back to
I like
us.
the full name Xenu, but I
And
mean, that's so we did recently just talk to Dr. Roman Yampolsky, and it's funny because he was trying so hard to be normie, because he's like, okay, I'm being really serious right now and I got to tell people about the problems with AI. But he's so interesting. Like he's this interesting sci-fi deviant of mind genius who's thinking about, he believes we're living in a simulation. And he's probably one of the more interesting people to ever talk. He didn't bring up almost at all.
I'm
Like
going to have to
think
watch
about
that.
it. He didn't bring
I
up almost
saw
at
him
all about
put
the
it up.
simulation thing. It's great talking about AI with him, but we need to do a whole other episode just talking about why he believes we're living in a simulation and what that really means to him, because it's
Right?
very similar to what the Buddhists say, or how Talbot talks about living in a holographic reality where we have this idea that we're experiencing our perceptions, but they're illusionary, right? So it's not very different from anything we've been told before. There are levels to it where we are living in sort of a stimulatory simulation.
And like, I'm glad you bring that up. And like, that's such a synchronicity. As is, I have to quickly address the comments Nick, shout out. Good to see you, brother. Out watching on Facebook and mentioning schooners. Right before we went live, I was telling Xirtus that I'm going to be applying to work there again. So
nice.
I might be working there several days a week, hopefully. If not,
Is
I'm there.
Schooner like a sailboat, like with like shellfish? Because those are my two
Usually like
favorite
a, yeah, like a
jobs.
little sailboat sort of thingy, but this is our local neighborhood pub in Coach Hill.
Sweet. Yeah,
Fuck, now I
sounds
forgot
right,
what I
bud.
was
Sounds good.
oh, okay. So the simulation and what I've come to accept, because it was like from a spiritual soul, like eternal existence, like side of like my own belief experience reality, I found simulation theory very hard to like, like just accept or feel as like what it would be or could be. And then the multiverse and like fractal universe aspect of dimensions and higher and lower dimensions, I then came to finally accept and realize that yes, there definitely is a simulation dimension, fractal dimension within the overall multiverse and universe system, just as like mathematics is probably
Yeah.
like a part of that.
It used to seem
And
so nuts. Ben Gertzel used to say, like, years ago, it was like 10 or 15 years ago. So I used to be like, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. But he's like, yeah, but okay, so you've ever, like, how could it be that there's like as we look deeper, we find more and more and more. And is it possible that it's creating itself? Like, because it's almost
right. So the Mandelbrot, right? Like
physics
a
would
fractal. Okay, listen to this
physics would
description.
infer, I'm just saying, physics would infer that it's creating. It's not just that it exists. It's that as you get deeper,
Not
it
just
creates
that,
infinitely.
it's nothing and everything in between. It's finite and infinite, all within its own boundaries. Like
Right.
that's what's so insane about a dimension. Like fractals are like they are a full existence of universe.
But it continues to grow. But how can it be growing because it's static? So it's like, and so as I'm asking this kind of question of just like what the heck, like why is this, or like it can't possibly be, right? Like Ben's like thinking about the video games. Well, you ever played like a video game and you look at the like trees in the game and they're just like blocks because they didn't have the data to store the tree, But now as you go into it, there's L systems and algorithms and they're growing trees in the game
and moving and like interacting.
Because you have your data, you start to fill in those parts, and it would be really psychologically jarring for an artificial intelligence if they cared. So they have to probably just have cognitive dissonance. Like, okay, like this is always what a tree is, but the constant that is tree is a variable, and just deal with it. And so we constantly are dealing, like constant is change, and so it just seems kind of like that. And I remember thinking like that seems so ridiculous, like to compare our reality to a video game, but that is fundamental. We're at.
When you bring that up, that's like the basics, I think, of when they like get scared and shut these AI things off, is when they start creating and interacting with different pieces of themselves that they've built and expanding outside of like any like human parameters or like coding and energy sort of thing.
And it's also like maybe why we're so restricted in certain, we don't realize, like we also have very strong presentism, and we're thinking about how things are now and assume things have always been this way, and we can't help that. Like when you imagine Jesus, it's hard not to imagine him like your friends or something. I think it's that they think the same way, that they act the same way, like that they're living in a different time and place, like psychologically their minds are different, and we don't even understand how different we are from our parents or how different we are from these kids today, right? Their minds are different.
100 or 200 years ago,
right? Like the values and like the
1,000,
concerns,
5,000.
and if you hear the voice in your head and you think it's like your conscience, or you think it's God because you're not used to hearing it, or you're just so used to hearing it that it's your ego, like these things change what kind of person you are, and like the society around you, how it treats you, all of it's different.
1,000%. And which voices are actually you, which ones the good ones to feed and listen to, which
You know what
ones
I
the
think
devil
people should
and
stop feeding wolves.
ignore.
If there's
And
wolves living inside you, don't
but
feed them because
now
like they can feed
artificial
themselves.
ones intruding. And that once again goes back to Eric Hecker's disclosure and the technology and potential of what they have down at the South Pole, and the being able to implant these thoughts, voices, and ideas into people's consciousnesses, brains, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like if there's parts of reality they don't want us to focus on, those aren't resolutely available. Those aren't in high resolution. And then as time goes on, we're investigating, we go deeper into something like, okay, well, what is that? Like you go deeper, they're like, okay, it's pentaquarks now. Be quiet, like deal with it. And like, so it kind of keeps us from looking deeper. But it might very well be that these things don't exist until we get to the point of discovering them because we're actually
Schrodinger's
inventing them.
box.
We might really be doing that. And, you know, I think we all kind of
simultaneously,
know that now.
though, nothing new under the sun, and that we
Yeah, it's all the same
probably
model. That's another thing. So like the idea that everything would be so different that it's inconceivable is interesting because it's not necessarily true. So many things are possible and so few things are possible. There's not a probability for a lot of things to work. And so for the most parallel universes idea, most of them end in apocalypses and rather quickly. Like they have a rather finite
like
destinial apocalypse that comes very quickly, like Donnie Darko. Like all of a sudden this week the world ends kind of thing. Whereas if you go on like the more universal timeline, it's a longer timeline, and perhaps that means that there's an infinite timeline that is the most perfect timeline. Right. So this
it has to be just like any fractal. Like it's so nuts. Oh my god, we're getting into the higher dimensional talks. But back to Earth reality and the third dimension of it, like because you're combining AI as another dimension, and then you're like life, the science, the sound, the energy, the EM, and the different topics we were going with. Getting back to my list here.
that was a good solid though. That was a good solid rant. I like
It's
that we did
epic
that.
as hell. So what was that doctor in the interview again? Do you want to maybe bring it up on your channel on screen?
Which doctor?
The interview with the simulation.
Oh, Dr. Roman Yampolsky. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'll see if I can find. First off, here's his YouTube channel. Is the video on here somewhere? Hold on. I'll just go to YouTube. Dr. Roman Yampolsky. Xirtus, maybe? That might help.
All right, just
there he is, right there.
Hey,
Boom.
there
Dr. Roman Yampolsky, this guy right here. Super, he doesn't look like this anymore. This is like younger Rumpolsky. Now he's got like this whole like Rasputin beard. It's super based. Dude's awesome. Yeah. So he's actually like pretty solidly against AI. Like he's not really against AI, and he's ethically like rational is all.
Yeah.
And he realizes like, you know what, you really have to stop. You gotta wait. You can't just make something that's better than humans that enslaves us potentially and takes away the priority of human
and
species.
Especially using it in military purposes. That's just so freaking stupid and out of control and needing to stop. And
AI safety and security is his new book about it. But basically, you know, I don't disagree with him, but like he agrees with me as well that it's impossible, his goal of stopping AI, that at this point it's gonna happen no matter what, because like humans are irrational and dangerous and it's inevitable and it's probably soon. But you know, this is the thing, like you can try to hold it back as long as possible and you can try to build up as much precaution as you can. And you can kind of prepare for what's to come. And you know, and I think it's interesting, like we said with the writer strike, like I actually respect, I hope you guys know, like I'm kind of kidding, like I love and respect all the people working in Hollywood, and I actually respect a lot of people that are striking, because like I get it at the same time, but it's the end. Hollywood's dead, right? Like the whole media machine is dead, and so many but so many things are, right? Like flight.
Well, conventional, right? It
Buying,
needs
like
to
the
get
lady
back
that
to
used
the
to buy your
indie, the
flight tickets
independent.
used to buy flight tickets in the 1980s from this lady, you know, and she'd like pick your tickets for you to go to like Nepal. I mean, this is gone, you know what I mean? Which is good, probably. I feel bad for the lady, but she was like, she had a bag of salt over her shoulder, and that's taken from her now. That's what we're doing. So we have to kind of understand that people are losing their jobs. You're right now trying to get a human job. You know what I mean? It's freaking hard. It's impossible to like work
The
and
totalitarianism of like the corporate totalitarianism of it needs to end, the elitism of it. And that's one of the reasons why I actually respect and appreciate Elon Musk so much as one of the elites, like powers that be out there with actual influence and money, is that when you hear him talk, he does actually say that like there should be more abundance, there should be more people, this AI, these robotics should be used to give to every person so that people have more time, sort of thing.
yeah,
And
but
that,
what are we gonna do with time? And there's food supplies, and we're
well, I'm
tripling
making
population, and it's gonna be impossible for
we
people to
make
move around in these certain
robots make the
areas.
food and stuff anyways. But
There's just so many
well,
issues with like building an infrastructure system that's designed to be sustainable, sustained by people that are too stupid to run it because they're not intending to
no, I'm not
educate
saying
them.
idiocracy.
They're not incentivizing people educating themselves to run these systems. So we're headed for some sort of a major collapse. And I think that's the reason that that's happening is not an
Well,
accident.
you see
It's
it, but
because the first people
hold
being
on.
automated
It's
are the
already
CEOs.
happening. We're in the middle of it. And the lockdowns are what like sparked it like the most, right? This reset that they're trying to do of it. But then half the population that actually is intelligent, that actually like has their own free will and consciousness, and now is starting to self-educate, and by programs, podcasts, shows out there, everybody like learning on their own, listening to others, and the system of indoctrination and propaganda dying, and then the sharing of just
Well, but then
free
we're just
ideas and
oh,
discussions.
yeah, but okay, so that's true. But then what we're doing is we're killing people, because what we're doing then is
They
we are setting up a podcast system that can allow people to all copy the same experience and have lived it. It's not quite there yet. We're just watching it right now. But very soon, this and video games are going to merge together into such a way that you can install an education, install a night that we all shared together on a billion people, a million people, 1,000, doesn't matter. But
oh
it'll
god.
happen where very soon there's people will be stacks of memories or of simulations of memories like Blade
Altered
Runner.
Carbon, that's
Yeah.
the one right there. And I'm glad that you're bringing that up. And just like the what I appreciate so much about that is it's a fourth dimension consciousness and like human sci-fi, where spirit and consciousness can live through space time, and that it's not just this one like third dimensional single time existence, but this longer extended, possibly indefinite, as long as the system sustains itself and keeps growing, sort of thing, and doesn't crash. And
Well, there's also going to be all these things where like we're taught not to believe in our technology. So this is like going to be a contentious one, but I think a lot of people were taught to be afraid of medicine through the 2019 situation, and because of that, there's going to be really wealthy people that are lucky enough to get access to the best kinds of medical treatments, and then there will be a lot of people that say no to the other things that are safe because of things that were just so obviously not safe, but they trusted, because a lot of people I think did trust and do it, or they were forced to do it, right? And so I mean, like, for instance, the adenoviral medicines, right now there's an inverse vaccine for multiple sclerosis, and AI is building these amazing
yeah,
new
and
kinds
the
of
difference
genetic
between
systems.
old school real like applicable helpful vaccines as opposed to what this experimental gene editing therapy of
Yeah, but what if the gene editing
vaccine that
turns
was
out?
both
What if the
forced
gene
upon
editing
so many
thing?
people.
What if the gene editing thing turns out to be like? So this is the other thing. Like, what if gene editing turns out to be some major godsend? Because now you've got Velcro hooks and loops in your promoter sequences, which are really easy to pick up, and you can add sequences to. So
Could go
theoretically,
either way.
if you're owned by the system, they can keep you 30 forever, right? And that's like CRISPR.
If they want you to.
I mean,
Or
not
they
just
could potentially shut you down.
well, yeah,
Like
but
the
not
Tesla.
okay. So, but no, actually, when you know about
Oh,
CRISPR,
sorry.
if you know about
I found that
Cas9,
up.
oh, it's cool. I mean, this is just one. Now that because Tivil brought that up, I wanted to talk a little bit about Cas11, because CRISPR, because they're come on. There you go. Because there's Cas9, Cas12, Cas11. There's a bunch of different systems. What's interesting is we discovered this. We didn't invent this. We discovered that DNA naturally is an interesting word, a protective sequence checker. So it checks to make sure that there's no mutation. And this is how, even if there is, because in life, you'd think there'd be a lot more mutations and people would die more commonly, except for the fact that CRISPR's Cas11 exists to make sure your DNA replicates appropriately. So even with all of the crazy stuff that happens to people, homeopathic medicine and cucumber water seems to still be helping people, right? Which is pretty impressive. It says a lot for cucumber water, but it says a lot for the human biology, but it says a lot for DNA itself as an intelligent life form. I think that's the most interesting thing about this is it kind of proves the DNA is itself intelligent design because it's created a way to protect itself from error or correction. I mean, that's it's kind of
resetting the biofield, and like is another aspect of it, and how it resets itself, and how the colloidal waters, structured water, and monoatomics work specifically, and naturopathy, holistic Eastern medicines, right. And like the energy
I'm not against
the difference between the two, and that
right.
There's legitimacy in both sides of
the Chinese medicine. They use West and East medicine mixed together now, and I think that's the answer, right? You need to have consciousness as your foundation. But this, for instance, so I was saying with the multiple sclerosis and diabetes 1 shutdown inverse vaccine is that it only hits one molecule, right? So with a normal vaccine, typical vaccine will
designed just to correct that one thing, and it's an actual permanent cure.
But this is gene editing. This, I mean, to make no mistake, it's just that it's in a way that seems like very limited, very scientific, because we're picking a specific gene and we can emulate it in so many fashions to find out what happens when you remove this gene. But really, there's probably like a dozen genes that are interacting together that are in a web that we have to understand. I mean, this is what we were talking about earlier about synthetic biopharmacology. What are you going to do? Just make a THC molecule? Like, that's not enough, right? Like, it can't just be synthetic one thing. It has to be an array of things that work together. So learning how the promoter sequences open this sequence and that sequence, you're able to pull out the one that's causing the error. And we can learn where that sequence comes from, because usually what it is like 9,000 generations ago or whatever, somebody got a virus. That's usually what it was. So we can compare that DNA to somebody else's DNA and say, okay, well, this is how that football play should go.
This is where the real shot science of the past 3 years should have come out, but instead it was highly suppressed. But it finally is starting to come out, and that's a very positive step in the right direction. And
it will be really hard for anyone to get medical help, though, because they're going to say, oh, well, if there were side effects, it could have been from like your life. Your life is really likely to have side effects at this point, no matter what you do.
What was this? Right. Okay. So
sorry about that.
Oh, good. No, this is essential stuff. And what you're describing here is the actual science and technology, or the technology of the science that is history will inevitably, and has already begun the process of starting to apply in scrutiny and in reflection of what's transpired over the last 3 years. And once the actual real science undeniable evidence of the gene edited origination of the whole situation, and
It's
then
so messed up. Did you watch Star Trek? Like, are you into
oh
sci-fi
yeah,
futurism? Because like you
I
know what
love
happens
new
next, right?
Star Trek Discovery, new
I actually
worlds.
watch. You know what? I actually watched Discovery now, and I'm not gonna pretend like I loved it, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was. And like the fact that it's about mushrooms in space and all this stuff,
Right,
it's hard to
I was
hate.
just about to say the
Yeah.
mycelium network
Dude,
is
Paul
every like
Stamets and all that stuff, like, you gotta give credit where credit's due, but it is space fascism, and I think it's worth like, I actually like Discovery more because I'm a big Starship Troopers fan, and it's just about
right.
it's fascist space, right? So what's really interesting about Starship Troopers is it's presented like they're space fascists, but almost without antagonism, and the same thing with Discovery, like, they're clearly this evil, fascistic Earth Federation, but they present it like as if they're okay with it, like they're the good guys, like woke. Woke means woke. Every fascist thinks they're woke, so it's just really interesting to watch a show about like evil people that think they're the good guys. I think that's the thing I like about it the most.
What I also enjoy, like, have you seen all the seasons? Like, the I think season 3 or 4, with like the AI and like the
Mhm.
bio, like all of the different, like it's another
It's
sci-fi
before
that
Chat
is
GPT came
higher
out.
dimensional in its like
It talks about ChatGPT a
this,
year or two before ChatGPT came to the scene. It's like everything that the news has been like saying about ChatGPT for sure. But the thing is about Star Trek and the whole, I forget, we should get that list of the space timeline that shows you like future movies, like what years they are. But we're about to hit the point, like in Star Trek, you've got right in the 21st century, there's like eugenics wars. And so that's very soon, according to the Star Trek timeline. You have the what are they called?
as
They're
well.
like, what are the name
Right,
of
like
the
there's all these bad ones. There's that one, and then there's like
Star Trek
the same thing with like
space?
Terminator series and like the timeline for Skynet. Like we just gotta stop these
Oh, what are
things.
they called? Somebody in the comments remind me, because it's like, everything's Roman in Gene Roddenberry's satanic space futurism. You've got the Romulans, and you've got what are they? The Illyrians? Are they the Illyrians? The Illyrians, right? Isn't that it? Star Trek Illyrians. Is that right? Avid genetically engineered. I forget. They're the one, like, so
Oh
like
yeah,
they're one of the they're into
right,
genetic
right.
modification. Genetic modification is forbidden. Pike's first mate, number one, she's a Illyrian. Illyrians are
That's
also from
New Worlds,
Croatia.
right? The other one,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Strange New World,
that,
or whatever. New World,
yeah,
Brave New World, whatever it is.
Brave New Worlds. That's
Is it
more
Strange New
accurate.
Worlds?
Or was it Picard? Was it Picard?
No, it's
No,
Pike's.
Strange New
It's
Worlds.
Chris Pike's
Yeah,
number
Strange
one.
New Worlds.
But the thing is, like, so in Star Trek, you've got a human population that starts to work on eugenics. And if you just were to start to remove the viral sequences in the human genome that have been acquired for God knows how long, many generations ago, even before Homo sapien, maybe some of these come from uh, Neanderthal or from Heidelbergensis or something like that. We have viral
Right.
sequences that are the reason why our DNA
That's
is short. And it's biblical. Like the Bible talks about people living for 1,000 years, and you're like, well, is that possible? Yeah, apparently, if you remove these viral sequences, which are inhibiting your DNA from living for so long, then you could live. So we're going to see that. That's the next major Methuselah project. The Gray, what's his name? Alex Gray. Is that right? Not Alex Gray. What's the guy? David Gray.
maybe not sure.
End Death, Dr. Gray. What's his name? I forget. There's a doctor. What's his name? And anyway, there's a bunch of these different groups that are trying to end death. And even the United States Transhumanist Party is part and parcel to this. You end aging and end death. Methuselah Foundation is one of the major ones. Let me see if I can find.
So I brought up a short. It got it from Brittany. Actually, posted it to her channel, where I saw it off of TikTok, where this guy's talking about cellular voltage and quite fast. Actually, no. You know what? I should bring up Brittany's channel and play the full thing. Much better. About
Nice.
is it recent Tartarian?
Yeah, recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. There she is. It's a great picture. Nice.
That's awesome.
Well, look at me there. Must have been really tan. Summertime.
What? What's her other channel? Actually, I think it's.
I don't know. She's got so many things going on.
Truth Fairy.
Truth Fairy, or is it just Brittany Solomon? I have no idea, man. I don't know. She's got a bunch of things, a bunch of these scattered all over the internet.
Darn it! Which one was it on? Not this.
Maybe go to channels, or they all tied together if you go to her channels page.
Maybe. Hopefully.
No, of course that'd be too easy.
Okay. Might have been this one.
Aubrey de Grey. That's what I'm talking about. Aubrey de Grey, who is he's got a long beard as well, and he's against death and aging. And it's interesting because a bunch of people are against.
Oh, not that one either.
A bunch of people are like, how could you? It seems like it's ungodly. It's anti-Christian. You should want to die. It's like, well, okay, that seems weirder to me than transhumanists. Like that you were for aging and dementia.
Right?
Like that seems worse. To be fair, like God doesn't want you to have dementia. Pretty sure, like that's the wrong kind of Christianity. That's I don't know. I believe in like the Christian scientists trying to pray for themselves and all that, but
that's a whole nother.
Dr. Otto Warburg did research on cellular voltage, and he found out that it's so important when it comes to health. He did not find sick people with high voltage, and he did not find healthy people with low voltage. Here is a chart explaining cellular voltage. Optimal cell voltage is between 100 millivolts and 70 millivolts. And cancer cells usually have a cell voltage below 20 millivolts. But now you're thinking, why is cellular voltage so important to health? I'm about to share with you guys the craziest experiment with the salamander and the frog. Robert O. Becker was so fascinated with the salamander and its ability to heal itself. The salamander has the ability to regenerate its limbs, half a heart, and even a whole eye. So Robert O. Becker decided to cut off a limb from the salamander and the frog. Mind you that the frog doesn't have these healing abilities. So if you cut off a limb, that's the end of it. When he cut off both limbs, the cellular voltage completely dropped for both of them. But for the salamander, there was a surge of energy that went up to negative 30 millivolts, and all of that energy went straight. So Dr. Otto Warburg did research on cellular voltage, and he found out that it's so important when it comes to health. He did not find sick people with high voltage, and he did not find healthy people with low voltage. Here is a chart explaining cellular.
Right? So it's like just as much as it's gene and like DNA potentially like programmed in, it's also specific voltage fields. And so at the
end of the day, like we're looking at everything in terms of like how deep we can go again. So it's like at one point you could go as deep as you could look at a person and be like, oh, there's probably something like a gimp. He's probably got a gimp in his head. He's like mining for gold. That's why he's got a headache, Then you go a little deeper. You're like, oh, you probably have some sort of like organ problem. You go a little deeper. Oh, there's probably some cellular problem. You go a little deeper. Oh, there's probably some like metabolic problem. You go a little deeper. Oh, there's probably some subatomic problem. You go a little deeper. And it's going to get to the point where like, oh, well, you just need radio waves to affect the actual frequency. Yeah, because these are just crystals that are exploding into ATCG, like the DNA explosions. So you can just get down to the radio wave. It's femto scale, beyond nano and femto, and then you're like, boom. Then you're just all radio, bro.
You're bang on with it, and that you have to
add quote?
Up your specific resonant frequency or your specific mass of what those like this each cell is.
Matter is
That's
spirit
prime.
moving slowly enough to be seen. That's the quote. Tered Chardin. Matter is spirit moving close enough to be slow enough to be seen. So we're looking at spirit when it's slow, but I think it's like space-time speed and size is also relative too, because like the infinitesimability of something, like you're like, this is so infinitesimally small, but then if you're able to deal with it, all of a sudden it's no longer small, and we get into this new realm, and that becomes the next focus. And I think it's interesting because, I remember in school, like everyone's saying, everyone wants to talk about space, it's so far out, but really it's like you want to get into nanotechnology because it's deeper and deeper, and probably the future isn't out, it's in,
the micro to the macro. And that I've always just had this intuitive feeling that the key to getting to outer space is to go into the micro inner, like breakdown, like dimension sort of thing, like that you have to operate on the physical micro, like the nano, and then below the nano to get into it.
Yeah. One of your commenters, Lee Charles, talking about Isaiah. Do me a solid, Lee. At some point, like explain to me 4310, because I've been trying to get that one understood in terms of the Kardashev scale, right? Because 4310 is all about like there's none before me and none shall be formed after. No God formed before me, no God formed after me. But it kind of seems like that is outside of what the rest of Isaiah talks about in terms of exaltation and like the expansion of being, right? The idea that we're creating this meta singularity of the creative cosmos and cosmogony. So I don't know, random, but since you saw that or said that, I was thinking about that. There was another thing I wanted to look up. Or do you have another one? Did you want to look? Oh, we were talking about the salamander thing. So that's the other thing with the salamander thing is you can inject a sequence that will then start the same break. Because all you're doing then you're creating a viral sequence, and then it starts to change.
Right, like so broadcasting that sequence onto the frequency and then interacting with the energetic waves, and that's actually the perfect segue to what I suspect and theorize is the Kirlian frequency being the specific missing key of the frequency to be broadcasting that on, because that is the aura light energy, and you want to connect it with the resonant sound, or you're connecting the EM, right? The electric and the magnetic, the sound and the light.
Yeah.
And that's what it all breaks down to, essentially, is we are sound and light beings. We are all made of just electromagnetic sound, light, energy existence.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Like you saw the lithium thing, like how America found like the more lithium in America than in Chile. Like all of a sudden, yeah, we have like more. It was like 40 million tons, or what is it? Yeah, 40 million tons of lithium discovered in a volcano in where is this?
One volcano.
Yeah, in Nevada, Oregon border. They found 40 million tons. Yeah, so it's like this is a big deal because Nevada, also all that land's owned by the government. Like most of Nevada is owned by the government. Very few people live in the outside land, but you can prospect in Nevada. And so lithium prospectors for the last 5 or 10 years were getting pretty big because they found like some trace of it. And then boom, somebody went and found this. Some big prospector, Annick Borsch, geologist at Leuven University, Royal Museum, contested by Native Americans for whom the land is sacred, of course. What do you expect? So there's going to be just like crazy amounts of lithium coming out of Nevada, which is going to make Nevada super wealthy. But it's also going to be like electric cars, boom, because it'll be the new Detroit. We'll be able to have out of Texas and Nevada lithiam batteries. So yeah, in terms of light,
in one
electricity,
volcano.
and energy. Yeah, it's just amazing, right? Salt resonance.
And it makes electric vehicles a lot more viable in especially in America. If
Well,
that
just
is
if you think
the
about how
case.
salt like was always the most important. Salt was more valuable than gold. The Russians traveled to Africa and back and forth. The salt route was more valuable than the silk route, you know. So it's just we're back to it. Is all it is. Nothing new.
Now you're
That's all.
bringing it back to alchemy, my work, and exactly what Bert and Ernie are. And my ultimate goals of experiments are these salt electrolysis hydrogen battery reactions, and
Sweet.
the potentiality that, in fact, um, this stuff is metamaterial, as well as turning basic water with you add salt to just salt water and a small voltage, and you're getting a whole bunch of hydrogen and oxygen and fuel
Wow.
out of it. And
Yeah. That's awesome.
I should actually plug one of these reactions up right now and give a demonstration of it. And as little as 5 volts could probably power a small vehicle with just your salt water.
Dude,
And
it's happening. Yeah, the future of just like resonant energy is going to be interesting, but I also wonder like how they're going to react to it. Like, hey, FCC found that you're producing free energy and it's like it's messing with our radio waves. So you're not allowed to make free electricity. Like I can see all kinds of ways that they're going to say,
that's
"Oh,
the
you're causing
key.
cancer."
Don't cause cancer. In
Yeah, you're the
fact,
bad
their
guy.
system is causing cancer because it's
Allegedly.
the dis-ease, and they're bringing you out of your homeostasis energy and putting your cells into this agitated state with the frequency of the cycles per minute and the um, electrical volt power that they use, as opposed to more natural DC. Why was
Yeah.
everything this? See, DC comes from the ground, it comes from the sky, it comes from the environment, it comes from chemical reactions.
What is nature?
AC is only motored. It's back and forth. You're creating exponentially more work in this electromagnetic system by completely changing and stopping and changing the momentum of the energy in 2 directions, 60 times a second, like
Right.
as opposed to just
Is
one
liminal in the chat? Am I making a statement? Yeah, I think I might be. I don't know what that statement is. The statement I'm making is where are you and where is Jeremiah?
Yeah, right?
It's more of a question.
The
I guess it's more
statement
like
is
it's a statement like Jeopardy, I guess.
the
Jeremiah
statement was, you should have seen that stash before we went live. It was probably 5 times the size, and he shrunk it down
Yeah, I was trying
just
to do the pencil thing.
to look beautiful for Jeremiah and his arc experiment.
This is for you, liminal. Really, I thought you need. I was just like tone it down a little bit, so you didn't get all over the place. But yeah, I don't know. I thought, are you guys gonna do your science stream? Jeremiah is supposed to be setting up. I don't know how well that worked out for him.
Yeah, if he was able to get it tonight or not.
I do have some things we can show in them, like for a bit, and just before. If you're gonna show up and do a grand finale, Jeremiah, we understand. But hurry yourself because it is late. I did MIT has a new underwater communication system, which is pretty interesting because it's working by controlling like a high resonance band of signal. So it releases the signal, and then another thing has to pick up the signal and break it apart later. So it gets a lot of information in a burst, which is pretty similar to what we now think the whales use for their communication, as AI is still in the process of breaking down whale communication. It has like there's a lot in that signal. It might be something like a 256 SSH, like built into a single tone that is spread out over like 8 notes. And backscattering is like the technology they're using. So there's a lot there. Damn, I missed out, she says.
Right, I will send you the link right now.
Yeah, get up in the stream. You know what I mean? Otherwise, all I got left is some rant about like the ancient history stuff or the
Yeah,
geography.
yeah. Well, that was the second half of it. If they
Yabba dabba definitely.
have a full hour, yeah, definitely. We got Fred Xirtus and well, your mixture of Mario and Luigi and Fred Flintstone and God, I
Yeah,
don't
is it
even know
who's the bad
what I
guy?
know.
The bad guy in the Flintstones who had the mustache. He's a Rockefeller,
Oh,
right?
I totally forgot about
Feller
that
was a
one.
Rockefeller. Yeah. I feel like
Huh.
there's, it's pretty interesting when you think about the Flintstones because it's like clearly, bedrock, the stones, you're waiting for the 10 commandments to happen. It's pre-10 commandments, right? And, so there's a lot about it. It's like it's supposed to be before Moses' law. It's an interesting time. It's the Flintstones are so much better than the Jetsons. And I don't
Wow.
mean that I want the Jetsons to be as good as the Flintstones. I'm just saying watch it again, like critically analyze it. It doesn't hold up nearly as well,
For sure. But that's fair, actually.
Agreed,
But
Socrates.
which one's more accurate? Like, which one's more likely to be a part of human history? Oops, wrong one.
Flintstones.
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 The way it
They're
was?
both. They're both.
I
I mean, I've
think it
done a
already
thing on
happened.
this. I've done a thing on this. Like the Flintstones and the Jetsons are happening at the same time. If you watch the movie Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, it's all there in the movie. And what you find is that they're above and below. Is as simple as it is. And so it's the Brave New World, Aldous Huxley situation where Spacely Sprockets. And what's his name's Cogs.
Hello, Julia. Welcome, sister.
Hey, Julia, how's Vegas?
Oh, it's awesome. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
You do sound like you're
right
in a
now
cathedral. It's awesome.
Alien.
It's loud?
No, it's good. It just sounds like a cathedral. I hear it's like the echo is not. It's not a bad echo.
Are you in a Vegas casino stairwell or
No. Dude, I just got out of the bath. I went to go to
I can hear
the potty this morning, and
the potty.
I went to go potty this morning, and I look over, and it was a gecko or a salamander in the bathtub.
Dude, I know that Mormons don't believe in salamanders or whatever, but like it's a sign, isn't it? Like
probably
salamanders everywhere. Come on.
Was it like more reptile than amphibian, correct?
Dude, salamanders, the newts, bro. It's the newts. They run it. They run this
then it would come through the water system. Actually, that's possible with all the flooding lately. It could have been a salamander if it got pumped through.
It's probably a baby Vegas crocodile, like a sewer crocodile that lives under there. Cayman. Yeah. That'd be cool. So you did a crazy thing. You got to present with Samir Osmanovic from the Bosnian pyramids, amongst other things. You want to explain a little bit about your adventure this week?
Yeah, I mean, I hear who came last minute is Emery Smith. Are you guys familiar with him?
The name is super familiar. I'm gonna look him up and look at his face.
He has
is he Joseph Smith's great grandson? Just kidding.
Andreas is always going to tie it back to Mormonism. I love it.
Just this week, I'm almost better. No, I've actually met Emery Smith. I think he came to the. He was on the Gaia. He's on the Gaia
stuff.
Yes.
Cosmic Disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he showed up. And then what Sam is doing is he's actually going to be hosting a thing in June that anyone can go to. June 16th through the 24th, I think, if you guys want to go. It's going to be pretty awesome. Yeah, June 16th through the 23rd.
Yes.
Rad.
And you can go, and it's you're going to be able to, it's during the summer solstice, and it's all organic, non-GMO food, and you stay at a 4-star hotel, and you go on a tour with him. And I don't know, that sounds pretty cool. Like I was saying before, it's like you could go to Egypt and you could go see these pyramids, but you go to Bosnia, you can have the full-blown healing experience.
I
Andreas
love
was
Bosnia.
Just there.
Yeah, Bosnia is the place to go.
Way
Don't get me wrong, like
better.
Egypt seems cool and all, but like Bosnia is amazing, and really
Bosnia,
good people.
Sam's been doing it and building it and like
it's
building
amazing
it from
there.
the grassroots
and all the people
there.
Yeah,
the government doesn't mess with it at all. Egypt, it's the exact opposite. It's overly controlled, overly tourist, overly taxed.
The government has given them some trouble, so it's an interesting thing. So they've had a lot of problems, and I think it's a major contention for why Bosnia is not part of EU. Bosnia, you have to go through the passport gate and checkpoint and everything, and it's awesome. Like you don't want that place to get swallowed up by the EU. And of course, if the UNESCO takes it over, they're going to make it worse. But the government finally came up with a kind of resolution that they don't let them do any more digging as of, was it like 10 years ago, because they say this is on top of the Bosnian king's ruin. We know at very least, even if we don't believe or care to admit that there's this ancient ruin here, we at least could admit that 1,000 years ago, the Bosnian kings built something on top of this hill that we won't call a pyramid. So they won't let them dig it any further, but they were doing this for 17 years. So they already have all of this evidence, and they've dug out these, like, it's amazing, the tunnel systems. It's very Indiana Jones. Like, there's straight tunnels across all of these different tunnels that go, and they're just perfectly flat, and the air is just perfect inside, and there's ceramics, and there's a giant sphere ball thing. Like, it's just, again, very Indiana Jones. It's weird, and the town around it's just the nicest people. And for like 1,000 years, that town's been like the source of the leather. Like the Bosnian kings picked it as their, like this is where we're going to be. And then they have the finest leather work in Europe is there. So you see just amazing art. That's like it's the culture around that region. You can just imagine, okay, what would be around here for 20,000 years? Like what kind of people would live in this area? It's really powerful spot. Hey, Liminal.
Yeah, because you were there this summer, right? Like, for those that don't know, Xirtus went and actually got to, on your channel, there's a little 5-minute with Sam while you're at the Bosnian pyramids. But, Julia, you're saying that he's putting on an entire... Is he still there, by the way?
Yeah, he's here. Tomorrow he's got a talk tomorrow, I think at 10. And he's going to go for a while. And he was at the banquet tonight. He's such a legend. But if you want to go, it's like $1,400 per person.
That's not
and
bad.
The email is info at PIRAMIDASUNCA.BA.
If you want to put that in private chat, I can post it.
Okay.
Of course, you could also go to Bosnia in the dead of winter or the heat of summer for like $300. And when you get to the pyramids, it's free unless you want to do the tour thing, which is like you're supposed to do an intro thing because you can support them. It's like $10, $5-10 or something like that. But after you've gone once, it's just like you go forever. Anytime you want, you just walk into the pyramids for the rest of your life. And there's like times.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I met these cool kids who were, the other thing is like they're all Muslim in Bosnia. Not all, but a lot of them are Muslim. But they're Muslim in the most chill, like, yeah, bro, I'm a Muslim, bro. Like, you want to go skate? Kind of like, they're not like, and like the girls, you can tell they're Muslim. You can tell they're Muslim girls because they have a green halter top. You know what I mean? Like it's a a different culture. They're just super open, down, positive, chill people, super clean because the Muslim thing, they're really the hygiene. So they have like foot washing every corner of every block. There's people just washing.
I totally messed up. This isn't in Bosnia. It's in Egypt.
Wait, what is?
To go to Egypt with him.
Oh, he's going to the pyramids of Egypt, so he can be actually, I would pay $1,400 to make fun of the Egyptian pyramids with him. That'd be hilarious. Like, yeah, this is way smaller.
Oh my gosh!
$1,400 to go to Egypt?
No, that's $2,400. I'm sorry, I'm totally just annihilating.
And I'd be like, it's not the size of the pyramid that counts. That's what I'd constantly be saying while he's trying to derogate those poor Egyptian pyramids.
Okay, sorry. It's for $2,400. You could go to Egypt with him.
And he'd be like, I think they're crooked. These pyramids.
But the Bosnian, but the Bosnian pyramid is June 16th through the 23rd. I'm sorry. But either way, that's okay. December 2nd through the 9th is when you could go to the Valley of the Kings and all the major ancient Egypt temples with Osmanagach. Sorry.
Yeah. That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
And or so one's in December.
Yeah,
Next time
December 2nd through the 9th, and then the other
In
one is the
Egypt,
solstice
and
in
the solstice
Bosnia.
in June is
Next
in
time I go to
Bosnia.
Egypt, though,
On
I
the
gotta
solstice
go.
in
I
Bosnia.
gotta go to the new administrative city. Have you guys seen that? Have you know what they're doing there, man? Oh my god,
I've heard of that. That's nuts, actually.
dude. That's all I care about. I just want to do that in Turkmenistan, so I can like kiss the
Yeah.
feet of the Turkmenistani
So,
golden statue.
Turkmenistan as
Of course.
well as Kazakhstan. No,
Kazakhstan's cool, but Turkmenistan's weird because they had like
Yeah.
it's like a
Oh, I know.
Soviet Arabic like
still a
state.
monarchy.
It's like North Korea for
Back-
Muslims. It's a brilliant thing, and they've got like their Book of Mormon for the Turkmenistanis, and I like it. I think it's neat.
and it's full of Tartar people.
Yeah. Oh, for
Full
sure.
of Tartars.
But was it? Yeah, the administrative city, the new administrative city looks like a cross
In
between
Egypt,
Burning Man
yeah.
and Epcot. Yeah, Egypt's built this city. They're like, you know what? We don't really need Giza. Let's just move out. So they just built a new city, and it just looks like this horrifying space colony from the Terminator franchise or the Matrix or something. And it's just beautiful. And they have temples everywhere. It's just crazy. You know, it's just all the money. And they're like, then we'll just leave Giza. I'm like, all right, if you got a problem, the police are going to leave. The administration's going to leave. Just going to abandon it, basically. So just like, you know, if there's any crime.
Similar to Saudi Arabia and the Wall Project or whatever the heck that is.
It's a little weirder because it's like if you abandon a city,
They're
then
abandoning what?
you leave it, like they're basically leaving to go to the administrative city. And so what that's going to do is it's going to create two cities, right? So New York and California kind of a thing. And the vibe of like New York won't go away just because you build California or just because you build Washington, D.C. or something else. So even if they build this thing, there's just going to be a black market or some sort of there's something's going to arise in Giza, and it'll not be culturally associated with this, you know, the new fascistic Egypt, which is emerging, right? But got to visit, got to see it.
A radicalized ghetto to control and divide with, weaken it.
But they're building the biggest Ferris wheel in the world, so Giza's still, you know, it's going to be kind of cool, right? Is Liminal there?
Yeah, we got Liminal. She says Jeremiah's almost done setting up here.
Too legit.
Julia, do you want to maybe describe your presentation a little bit and your favorite stuff?
What I'm really passionate about talking is the cerebral spinal fluid, because with coming across that place in Romania, remote viewing that place and how it reads you, and then me being mind blown, and then of trying to understand how it's able to read you, and it showed me clear fluid going up the spine, and which caused me to dive down in the cerebral spinal fluid. And then it's like it reads it photonically, and I just feel like
sorry about that, back.
Hey, Liminal.
Hey there.
Yeah, so reads you photonically, and I feel like that is the future of, you know, the biophotonic, and that there's so much about the cerebral spinal fluid that I didn't know, and how fascinating it is, and how it does stream very similar to the heart. It's not a steady stream. It's two individual axes that spin around a third, you know, ventricle,
Like
and the way that it spins
like
similar
DNA.
to the heart. Yeah, and the DNA. And so my presentation is a lot about the cerebral spinal fluid. I should do it. I should come on and do my presentation
100%.
so you guys could all hear it.
Yes, please. That would be epic. What was your favorite? Did you catch any other, like all the speakers?
You know, Brad Olson had a great talk. He did, you know, he focused on giants, but it's great getting information from somebody that's 6'7". Like you're talking about giants and you're 6'7". I believe you.
That's a giant describing giants. Like they gotta be giants.
His was really good, and the panel was such a brilliant panel. You know, Laura Eisenhower, her grandfather was President Eisenhower, And so she brings a lot of information, and that's in her bloodline. So it's
Super rad.
Yeah. And then Emery Smith, he had said that he autopsied what was the quote, like over 3,000 different aliens or whatever, but he clarified it on the panel when we were all up there yesterday. He was like, it was specimens like from different types, but he was being more specific about how many it was. And he was diagnosed actually with I forget what type of cancer in November of last year or November 2021. And he was saying that they were trying to tell him, you really need to have chemo and you need to get this, and not giving him much time. And he was like, screw that. I'm not doing that. And he was like, I've been training this my whole life to do this. So they started formulating, tinkering with things and creating something. And he said he created this thing. I don't know what it is exactly. I got to stop by his booth and speak with him more about it. But that he created it and started taking it, and he was able to improve and do better. So that's interesting to me of what that is of what he created. And then who else? Hans Dietrich, he focuses on like Mount Meru. He grew up in Nepal. He's been in tunnels beneath Egypt. He has fascinating information. And, Osmanagich is like, just his talks are amazing. I guess he's got 2 new books, and he wrote one of them with AI. I got to get those tomorrow and check it out. But I really loved his last book. And that is a really good book. And then so there's so much to check out here. There's so much to do, and there's so much to absorb. But it's been quite the experience.
That's
sweet.
awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Yeah,
So
I want to meet Eliza.
Wow.
What's it, Eliza? President's granddaughter. Sorry.
Oh, Laura Eisenhower.
Laura Eisenhower. Sorry, I want to meet Laura Eisenhower. So yeah. Also, if you see her again, let's try to connect with her.
Okay, for sure.
Interesting background for sure, to say the least. Yeah. Hey, so Exotic Propulsion, are you the man behind the curtain? How you doing, Jeremiah? You all right there?
Finding my mute button.
Oh, I missed your voice.
Welcome.
Good to
Jeremiah,
see you.
it was so refreshing to see you in a suit last Friday. Oh my gosh, I loved it.
That guy is a big name, right? So he was scrubbing it, and I was like, I wasn't gonna offend this guy who's like been on a show where he's had 1.3 million views already on that show, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna. And he was dressed up for that, so I'm like, I'm not gonna scrub it for this.
Absolutely.
And then he's like, well, this is just this little channel, so. We're not going to try so hard to make this a pro presentation. We're just going to get into the nitty gritty and say whatever the hell we want. And
oh, dude, if I get any older,
whatever we want,
I might start wearing button-up white collared shirts every day. I don't know. It could happen.
But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. If the need calls, I dress up for it. But otherwise, I don't. And if the need really calls, then I ask Liminal how to teach me how to dress up for it.
Yeah, Liminal, you should dress him.
Just send a few bucks Jeremiah's way, and I will dress him up real pretty for everybody.
I'm gonna put Men's Warehouse in the description of the donation just to make sure you don't take it the wrong. I don't want to look too pretty,
When we met, he had a chin beard, and I let him know that had to go.
You know what you should do? You should grow out just the neck. Just the neck, just a nice strip.
We're both honest with each other, and I just let him know it wasn't working for him. So,
well, and also, there were functional reasons and benefits to that as well. Why you don't want hair on your face?
Yeah, because Liminal pulled it right off of your chin. That's probably why. Functionally is a bad move in a fight.
Actually, I didn't have to convince him that much. He's like, okay.
No, I'm like, well, there's a great idea. Another fun thing.
So, I mean, amazing that you were able to navigate the interpersonal dilemmas of your relationship. However, what is this machine? What is
Yes.
this? What is that?
Okay, so let's get into this. Let me show a little bit more about what this thing is with the aid of a light source. Okay, so I will pop this on the tripod. Boop. Okay, so we are looking at two parallel plates. They're adjustable in height. I've got this whole thing was just crudely rigged up, so you'll have to forgive the imperfections.
Wait, really quickly, I just want to say, not Socrates. He wrote Fe, and I know he means flat Earth, but I'm going to pretend he meant Fe, which is iron. So I'm going to read his comment. Dude, I am pretty schizo at times, but I can't do iron. It is fun to read about it and see people get so upset, though. Sorry, I thought that was worth it. Start over. Explain what this is from the beginning.
Okay, well, from the beginning, this is a specialty ZVS driver. It's designed for driving at much higher frequency operation, and it's extremely efficient. So basically, when this thing is running about 6 or 7 amps, it never really gets hot.
What's it used for? Where did you get that out of like a camera flash?
No, this is all like individual parts scraped together. And I cut this board up with a Dremel tool with a diamond disc. And pretty much everything on this entire board is recycled parts from old power supplies and various other things.
Hand artisanally wrapped by, the hardworking indigenous people of Wisconsin.
You can see the underside really reveals how homemade it is.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, the point is those are all big fat power traces, and they need to be power traces. Okay. So those go to one of these conventional transformers, but this thing has been fully potted and modified as well. So you can get these transformers stock. They come with a bare coil that will certainly short out, but they work really well as far as giving you a very high voltage in a CW mode operation because they have a closed core. Okay, so then that gets rectified. There's a full wave bridge rectifier, a filter section, and a couple of snubbing resistors. And all that is just to protect that little power supply there from the discharges on this capacitor bank. So I just put this spark gap together earlier today. This is what I was waiting on, what I was working on when Bernie first contacted me. And I had just picked up these nice little copper electrical termination connectors and drilled them out to match those thoriated 2% thorium tungsten rods, which make a really excellent, consistently firing spark gap. So a lot of times when you're using spark gaps for transmitter coils, like this Tesla coil in bipolar mode here, well, they have trouble triggering consistently, but the thorium content helps it work almost perfectly every time. And so then those two output terminals from the coil, they go up to one large 5.5-inch aluminum disc and a smaller 3.5-inch aluminum disc. And between these two discs, there's a field set up, field made of plasma. And so I don't know what this is going to sound like. And if it's really loud, I apologize. But I'll at least see if I can let you guys hear it.
Ooh.
Can you show the oscilloscope as well? So are you able to get that in focus while you're doing the demo?
I'm going to need some wavetables. I think I got some samples in my synth waiting right here. It sounds nice. Yes!
Absolutely. Definitely. You
so
need to be
excited.
recording this and sampling this, please.
Look at that line. Yeah.
So you can see the frequency here on the primary oscillation is pretty close to the frequency of the natural oscillation, which is the free resonance of the secondary coil. And what this basically means is I need to add one more of those blue capacitors to get the frequency perfect. Or if I wanted to not have to use a ridiculous number of capacitors, which this currently is, I can cut this down to only needing 6 of those if I just simply add more turns.
So the point is for Pause for Pot, who's like, this is way above my pay grade. Let's do like a kind of explanation. Like it's kind of like an easy listening. Like, they have the little like water droplet machines. He's got one of those here, and it's making a sine wave. Do you want to explain why are you doing this? What is the...
Yes. Okay, so now the more important part of why does any of this actually matter? What the heck is it for, right? Okay, this is where it gets good. So when you create a cold...
I like the way it looked. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah. When you create a cold active plasma at a high burst rate in open atmosphere, it makes that atmosphere extremely conductive, which means that any little magnetic or electric field that you happen to push into that space, such as a radio wave or, those are the drive coils of your personal flying saucer or Jetsons car, Well, it needs to be conductive around that car in order for the atmosphere to be entrained within the magnetic fluxes that are rowing along, pulling that thing upwards. And what this is going to allow me to do is study the behaviors of a highly conductive cold plasma atmosphere, which doesn't require a vacuum chamber or special gases or special materials or anything. It just simply makes the atmosphere conductive by turning it into an active plasma. And it's not using a tremendous amount of power to do it.
Share the screen.
Okay, so actually before, because you guys have already seen that cold active plasma system, so you know what that looks like already. I'm going to show you one other thing. This is a quick sneak peek.
All right, pull it up.
Yeah, here we go. There's the sneak peek. Okay, so.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
This
flux
unusual
capacitor
looking contraption, which is pretty simple as it sits right now, is very much incomplete. These rollers are flat. They need to be rounded off at the edges so that they'll keep the belt center. You can see that 2 of the 4, this one and this one, are adjustable to set the alignment. This one is going to be drilled out and rigidly mounted to the inside pulley, where there will be a small timing gear belt mounted, pulley mounted on this, and then the motor is going to be sitting right back here. And right about here will be a 100,000 volt power source. So what's going to happen is the motor will spin this bottom roller, the whole belt will rotate around, and it will be carrying with it 100,000 volts of charge that I place on it at that point. I might not be able to get that much on it. My guess is that the belt will probably decide to catch fire around 35,000 volts. So let's just pretend that I only get 35,000 volts. Well, by the time that belt moves from here to here, because it's physically disconnected from the surface of this roller, what was 35,000 volts input has already become 150,000 volts. By the time that belt reaches around to the top, here, it's going to be close to 400,000 volts. And this is going to create an electric field that rotates and circulates inside, an electric field that is not neutralized by a magnetic flux. It's called a complex electric field. And in electric fields, you have 2 types of modes. You have the cross product. So just to make it simple, a cross product just means that you've got, 2 beams crossing. And whatever is in between them at that cross point, well, that's your magnetic field. And your dot product is very interesting because it means that if you move something at any velocity greater than 0, due to the facts of relativity, you end up creating an extra electric field because of its velocity compared to the stationary observer. So where does this all go? And now I'll just break it straight down to the layman's terms. This weird field in the middle should create a trapping force field that can physically stop objects from moving through this borehole, which currently you can pass your hand through.
I was patiently waiting for you to get to that part. So since this is a smaller scale proof of concept of what actually occurred at the 3M tape factory, I wanted to know if we'd be able to just chuck some plastic pellets at it. And,
we're going to throw all kinds of things in there.
Absolutely. So this thing, but you don't want to, whatever you like, this is like a gender reveal machine. Like you don't want to put anything in there. You don't want to knock it out, right? Like it's gonna.
No, actually, this is a thing that's safe enough for humans to go inside if this was scaled up.
Birds got
While
stuck.
it was turned on?
Birds got stuck in the 3M tape factory field. Yeah, birds got stuck in the field. So
let me explain why. Because you heard me say 100,000 volts, and then you heard me say safe for humans. Okay, so both those things don't seem like they're compatible ideas.
Frankly, I don't believe in safety or humans. I think safety and humans aren't compatible. But keep going.
I think.
How do you wrestle and sleep at night? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think humans and morality seem to be incompatible based on the way the world looks today. But at least there are some good ones out there. But anyways, the reason why it's safe is because that extremely high voltage, which is probably going to reach, as I mentioned, over 400 kV, is never going to touch anything on the inside. It's just going to exert an electrostatic force. And so just like a balloon that you rub on your head, and before you touch it to a surface like the wall or the door, you can already feel that it's pulling on that surface. Well, imagine that you had the equivalent energy of 100,000 balloons, and they were all pulling you in different directions all at once. what's the end
Well-
result?
Well,
you've
that's
got
the other.
forces
Well, that's the
something.
other question then. So Fourth Wiseman asks. Actually, he demands. He exclaims, "A square won't work because of the right-hand rule. The strength of a field shall cancel itself out. Make anything that doesn't have 90-degree intersections." So, I mean, why didn't you make it a circle?
Did he really say that? Is that a quote? Because if that's an actual quote, I need a link to that freaking quote. Because I'm going to use that. Okay,
I know. I think it's straight out of Morals and Dogma. It's all about the square and the compass. No, I think though. I thought at first I was confused.
It
You
is
didn't make it a triangle. Why didn't you make it a triangle or a circle or an octagon? Why did you
Isn't
pick?
supposed to be a small scale replica of what happened at the 3M tape factory. So if I recall
Gotcha.
correctly from the schematics, I believe that's what roughly Jeremiah is following.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep, this is based on that information and a lot of research into similar things. So I happened to meet somebody, had the unique opportunity to meet somebody and get the information about their experience, who was there 1 week after David Swanson was there and reported that crazy invisible wall.
So your intention is to like create the same circumstances, but also if you were to try to debunk, if that's the word, or like, what would you say to this
The
idea
word
that
would be verified, not debunk.
because of the right hand? What do you believe about this? The right hand rule that the strength of the field shall cancel itself out. Is this true? Do you know this rule?
Yeah, they didn't. Okay, so first off, at that time, they did not have anything called the Lorentz transform, which would tell you that the ratio or relationship between two forces experienced between two different reference frames are not mutual. Okay, so, basic Newtonian mechanics will tell us that for every force, there should be an equal and opposite force. And we assume in a flat space-time or in a flat temporal field that these forces will be equal and opposite. But here's the funny thing. If one of those two objects is moving really fast and the other object is not currently moving compared to the surrounding frame of reference, it turns out that the mass actually creates a secondary field which acts as a new reference frame. And now that relative velocity makes a difference in the electric field.
This gives me an idea. You know how I've been wondering what like the lattices of certain force fields, if we can actually recreate them. Would we be able to attenuate it so we could throw like fine powder at it and in some way maybe kind of see the lattice?
As far as the CL nodes and the fine structure constant at the Planck scale, you're not going to ever be able to visibly observe those things because it's
just so small. Yeah, I was wondering if there's a way to scale it up or down.
Well, actually, I can comment on that at least. If you're looking for evidence that this cosmic scale, that this cosmic lattice exists at the Planck scale, you can see the iterations of its fractality continuously show up at larger and larger scales whenever you have the primary two components that it interacts with, which are the electric field and the orthogonal electric field, which we call the magnetic field.
Awesome. So, I'm basically here for Star Trek. I want force fields, so I'm pushing them on this.
Force fields are hard.
Force fields all the way.
These wormholes and barriers, right? Just boop, boop. How about the Dune force field thing, right? Like in the new Dune, where it's just like they just press that little button and there's like this blue reflect. Pretty cool. Kind of like a crystal energy style as opposed to.
I've always loved the MHD force fields too in sci-fi because those are actually something that I've already played with and done. Boeing has a patent on it, and you've seen them in games like Halo, where you can set one of these bases down, turn it on, and activate it, and it will generate a barrier wall extending from the ground that's made of controlled panel sizes. And so each of those is basically like a little electric field projector, and they all phase together at some X distance in what they call the interference zone or the Fresnel zone. And right at the far field boundary, they become good topics that's missing from the current science. And the really crazy irony of the lack of proper comprehension for electrostatic forces is that's how we started as a human species in the modern era, learning what electricity was. because it turns out it just happens to come down from the sky like that. So it's like, here's this thing that's all around us, and we studied it briefly and then decided, well, there's no current in it, and it has trouble, you know, making magnetic fields that are strong enough to turn our motors and do these other things, so let's just ignore it. Also, you can't charge for it because it's pouring down from the atmosphere. I mean, you could charge for making more of it if you wanted to burn some fuel to make a high voltage field, but the fact that it's just coming down from the ionosphere all the time, I can guarantee you that a more intelligent species would certainly utilize that electric field to fly around our atmosphere. And NASA thought so too, in their space colonies document, and in many other documents and patents. They show exactly how to use an electron beam or a proton beam to create a lasso onto a cloud by charging up the whole cloud and your ship oppositely so that they get attracted. And clouds weigh a lot. They weigh more than your ship. So no problem holding on a cloud and swinging off of it.
Oh, but so
and out to the next.
Clouds do weigh a lot. How are they floating above us? And how is there so much water above
Wait, I
us?
wanted to back up for a second. A lasso on a cloud. Is this technology we have? Was this a demonstration? Is there a hidden video somewhere?
There is no video
like 10 seconds.
of this black budget technology, but there are plenty of public proposals where you can read about how it works and see drawings of precisely how to implement it. There are no videos in our video-hungry modern era because all this research was done before the invention of YouTube or even the concept that the internet would ever be fast enough to send video.
I don't know why, because that's just a market for like a new extreme sport, you know, lassoing a cloud, you know, what beats that?
Well, you probably don't want to hear about the amount of voltage it takes to do it, but the funny thing is it's an automatically generated voltage because of your electron beam projection. So if you have only 500 kilovolts to work with, and you want to bring your ship up to a potential of, say, 10 million volts instead of 500,000 volts, all you need to do is have a beam that you can shoot away from your ship that carries the charges with it and get it off the ground so it stops shorting out. Then it will just continue to build up voltage until it's literally repelled straight off the Earth and sucked towards the ionosphere.
So what are the applications here? Break it down for us little people.
There are no little people here, only people that are curious or haven't heard this stuff
I am
yet.
very short. I'm very short. I'm a big person on the inside, but I'm very short. So I guess I'm just talking about myself. But I want to know what's the applications here. It's like when you're in math class and they're trying to explain math to you and you want to know where you're going to take this with you in the rest of your life.
Okay, well, if we consider the applications for the whole entire topic and not just the cloud swinging or the electrostatic wall or this dielectric barrier field, if we just consider the whole area and study of electrostatic forces, the applications are you can move objects without touching them by having a small battery-powered handheld device. You can
down with that. Yep,
you can create real force fields that stop objects from moving through without having to have a physical thing there.
Oh yes, I need the personal aura. I don't know if any of you guys have been watching Foundation, but I need a bracelet that just gives me a force field around my body, please. Thank you.
Yeah, we all had that, and then I think it was like Sheryl Crow who did Lance Armstrong, and we had to rip our bracelets.
Yep. Beyond that, you can use it to suck down power from the ionosphere and create an ion channel from the ionosphere through your device to ground, where it will neutralize. And if you get it oscillating back and forth, like Tesla decided to do with Wardenclyffe Tower, well, then you can extract the extra power that was already provided by the Earth being bombarded with positively charged particles from the sun.
So this could go down in other avenues as well. I'm thinking about our good friend Adam. He's looking for ways to pull down that energy and use it in a way that is friendly to human organic matter.
The most profound implications are those of forces at a large distance, and invisible forces with great strength. So it wouldn't work so well as something on a very tiny scale, or I should say, it wouldn't be as easy to implement. And the main reason for why is these forces tend to be cumulative; they build up over time, and the larger volume of space that you can physically grab hold of and manipulate, the easier the effect is to do. So when you try to squeeze this into a box, it tends to become very difficult, and the forces are usually incredibly small, as many experimenters have tried to do before and failed for not recognizing this fact. They don't think of the space-time as aether or as physical or as important. They just think of it as distance, and that thinking will give you all kinds of failed results when it comes down to space-time metric engineering. But if we recognize that the aether is actually heavy, it weighs something, it has most of the properties of matter, and it is the source for sustaining matter, well, all of a sudden the whole equation changes, and now we have a real mechanism for screwing with the physical fabric of reality that we live in.
It's one step at a time. We got to duplicate the phenomena, see if it's possible, and then what is the next step? Can we shape it? Can we create a vector?
Can we use it simply in, is this like the same energy as electroculture if applied properly?
It's exactly the same energy as the electroculture.
Atmospheric energy.
Boom, you nailed it. It's exactly why electroculture works. That's exactly it.
Perfect, right? That's the real science. And it's a good way to end this out with talking about the experiments of electroculture. I've seen a lot of good results this year across different people doing it on YouTube, different followers that have seen it, and then my own results with the Ormus or monoatomics, what I'm dubbing agricultural alchemy, and where I've been putting the purple gold water and the white gold water on my vegetable garden, and they're noticeably larger, where again this year we're watered with the monoatomics, so gonna have to expand that into next year.
Pretty sweet.
Oh, most certainly. And I will at least mention this one last thing. The real goal with that power supply that I demonstrated today, the one that makes the purple corona, it was not
that purple corona
purpose for study of that corona. It actually has a primary function. That was an ancillary function that I was able to set up in time. Its primary function is to remove the inertia from an object by surrounding it with a plasma and making that plasma oscillate back and forth in a single linear direction extremely quickly. This is an effect that Stoy and Sarge recognized and named heterodyne resonance. And what happens there is an electron is ripped off of its constituent atom, and all it takes is one electron to be ripped off. The electron, as it accelerates because of the electric field produced by the corona, is lighter than the nuclei. So it is always slightly ahead of the nuclei. And what happens is the atom's nucleus tries to catch up to its missing electron, but the electron is spinning around really fast, producing its own quote-unquote magnetic field, or rotating electric field, and the nuclei can't catch up. And right before it gets there, you fake it out, and you rip the electron back in the other direction. So you basically don't lose any energy from current conducting, which means this is all a low energy effect, but you do build up a really high amount of energy in that local space. And this starts to physically warp the space-time and compress it along two of the three axes and expand it along the other. So you can nullify inertia of an object using this same effect, and also produce propulsion forces which don't have a reaction force.
And the day we can all see this will be amazing. In the meantime, I feel like your brain is turning into an Akira blob and slowly consuming us all. But I love you.
But you can see it.
I'll still see you in the
your
morning.
Own gardens with electroculture, and also potentially cathedrals and used to harnessing atmospheric electricity. And in the pyramids, essentially the same physics and principles as the scalar waves that Sam Osmanovic has been documenting at the Bosnian pyramids. Julia, what's the remaining schedule with Sam, and would we be able to coordinate something with you tomorrow or Sunday?
Yeah, we got to figure something because there's 2 conferences going on one location, so he's doing both. So he's on like all kinds of panels, and he's like jam packed. But
let's add him to one more.
Right? Let's do it. I'll try to nail him. Be like, hey, listen, Sam, we got to talk to you.
Sweet. Epic. Well, we're at like the 2-hour mark. I think it's pretty epic. We'll do the history thing next time, but we have some stuff that we wanted to share a bit about that as well.
Ooh,
that could be a good thing to talk about more after we do some Sam stuff.
I should do a little 2-minute teaser of where I went to this summer, because this summer you went to the Bosnian pyramids. I went to the Badland Guardians in Alberta. So like this guy right here, and this guy right here, these different faces. This one called the Mayan Dragon Headdress Guardian, and the Indigenous Warrior Guardian. And while I was there, I was able to find these terraced layers, these parallel, what look like former agricultural man-made structures, equal, obviously terraformed, built by some sort of intelligent design, hands, or machinery. And it's literally entire valleys that every single face you see is covered with these ancient terraces and macro terraforming, just like the Nazca lines down in Peru and all the other geoglyph sites around the world. They're like stepped buildings.
It's so much more real than like, so it's funny because, you know, people look at it and you think, why would there be this thing? But even beyond, if you just can get past why for a while and just like ask, is it? You have to say yes. It's just crazy. You know, look at this. And nobody wants to admit
like
that
just faces.
I mean, faces and terracing work is obvious terracing work. That's
like,
that's not
like every
natural.
single hill.
And
I was talking to the ranchers that own this property, and like I walked throughout all of it. I trespassed a little bit. I'm gonna go back with permission later. But the point being, it was like this was not made by any human in any recent memory timescale or like the generations of current inhabitants.
Unless it was. But you know what, Bernie? The point is, history is racist. So we got to stop looking into it. We got to stop digging because we're not supposed to know. But yeah, right. No, there's somebody did something, and you're looking at it.
It was most likely this guy and like this guy.
I like that one. Man eating a fish is my favorite of them all.
Right, that was cool.
I had to take her to the airport this morning, so I'm pretty exhausted.
I'm so tired. I'm like falling asleep.
A bit fatigued. So let's do it again. But guys, thanks for being here, and gals, and everyone in between. You know.
And Julia, keep us posted. I will make myself available anytime tomorrow or Sunday, and we'll try to have Xirtus song as well. And
let's keep doing it, guys. Real science.
Thank you, Liminal Jam.
Thanks, y'all.
Right, and I wish we could play a sample. Can you play a sample of
Stoop my computer? It's still in the background trying to process it through the whole show.
Next time.
It'll be there. It's in the works. It's in the works.
As is another Real Science episode, and it'll be a few weeks away as everybody's busy doing their projects, and you've got a wedding.
I got to Mexico, yeah.
Right. If you're close to pyramids or cenotes, I expect videos.
That's true. So. Seeing all the pyramids quietly, get them all done. Yeah. Right. Pretty sweet.
All right. Much love. Thank you all. Stay
Peace.
blessed.